I'm going to show you how to look up workflow logging messages via the Orchestrator REST API. Let's get started. Hi everyone, I'm Watrous from VVork. If this is your first time here and you want to learn about automating, programming, and monitoring in VMware environments, you're in the right place. As you know, you can log messages from your Orchestrator workflows by using methods such as system.log and server.log. In this video here, we're looking specifically at logging messages to the file system using the methods such as system.log, not server.log. In order to run the new REST request that I've defined here called get one workflow run system logs, you first of all need to have the information and the variables that we see here on our endpoint URL. At this point, you presumably know how to populate the workflow ID variable and the workflow token ID variable. If you don't know how to do that, you could go watch all of the previous videos, or if you just want a quick look, you could go back to part 11L, the previous video. So again, I've already populated the workflow ID variable. As you can see here, this workflow ID is the one that ends in 22 Charlie 2, which is the workflow called Hello World. And over here, we have a workflow token ID. Again, workflow token and workflow run means the same thing. The ID of a particular time I ran this workflow is this workflow token ID that you see here ending in 14 If you'd like to know more about that workflow run, again, see part 11L, the previous video. All right, so we've got all the information that we need in here. Let's go ahead and click send and see what happens. So when we send this REST request, we get back a bunch of information. In fact, what we get in the logs array is elements that correspond to the logging messages that I'm sure you've seen by now over in the Orchestrator client. So let's head over to the Orchestrator client and translate this into what you're familiar with. So here's the workflow that I was running, and this is the specific workflow run. Remember, this is the one that ends in 14 And if we go over to the logs tab, you can see the logging messages that were spit out either from the scripting code in my workflow. That's what this second line here, the one that says hello world, that's me doing the logging, plus all the logging messages that are coming from Orchestrator, such as this one that says item stack item 1, item stack item 2. Those are both from Orchestrator. So whether you're trying to look at your Orchestrator logging messages that you sent, or you want to look at the ones that are coming from Orchestrator, you'll see them all here. But how many logging messages do you see here? Let's count them. 1, 2, 3. I see 3 logging messages. If we go over to Postman to take a look at our REST response body, you can see that we've got 1, 2, and here's the third, 3 different logging messages. Now, I think each of these is pretty straightforward, but just running through it real quickly here, you'll notice that we can tell where the message is coming from. We can see a description of where it's coming from. We can see a timestamp of when the message was logged. We can also see this. So if I'm not mistaken, this here is in nice human readable format as opposed to how many milliseconds from January 1st, 1970. And additionally, we can see the severity level. So again, system.log sends an info severity message. But as you know, there's also system.warning and system.debug and so forth. So there's not a whole lot to this. Again, perhaps the trickiest parts to using this particular REST request is to get the workflow ID and the workflow token IDs. But you already know how to do that. If you don't know how to look up this information, go back to part 11L. Join me in the next video as we continue to explore the Orchestrator REST API.